alien abductions that can't be explained, the vanishing light. The road stretches endlessly before you, an unbroken line of cracked asphalt disappearing into the darkness. The headlights cast pale beams against the trees lining the highway, their skeletal branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. You are alone. The radio hums softly, playing some forgotten tune, the only company in the silent void of the night. There is no moon, only an oppressive sky smeared with clouds, hiding the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a lone coyote howls. You check the time. 2:37 a.m. You were supposed to be home by now. Then, the radio crackles. The song stutters, the static warping it into something alien, something wrong. The dashboard flickers, the headlights dimming. A strange pressure builds in your skull, like a silent sound pressing against your eardrums. The air in the car feels thick, charged, then darkness. You don't remember stopping, you don't remember pulling over, but somehow the car is no longer moving. It sits in the middle of the road, silent and still. The engine is dead, the radio is dead, even the air itself seems dead, still, unmoving, heavy with an unnatural silence. You try to move, but something isn't right. Your body feels sluggish, disconnected, as if it no longer belongs to you. There's a ringing in your ears, a deep vibration in your chest. The world seems distorted, stretched, unreal. Then you see it, a light, floating above the treetops, impossibly still. It does not blink, does not waver. It simply hovers, watching. A voice in your mind screams, "Move," but you cannot. The light begins to descend. A blinding white beam explodes from the sky, washing over your car in an instant, swallowing you in its glow. Your thoughts dissolve, your body lifts, your vision fades, and then nothing, missing time. When you wake, the world is different. You are still in your car, but something is off. The road looks wrong, the trees unfamiliar. The sky is lighter now, as if dawn is breaking. You check your phone, your hands trembling. The time reads 5:14 a.m. Almost 3 hours are missing. You don't remember anything. Not driving, not stopping, not even blinking. Your clothes feel strange, like they aren't quite the way you wore them. Your shirt is inside out. Your shoes are untied. There's a sharp pain behind your eyes, a dull throb at the base of your skull. And the dreams, flashes of impossible images, distorted figures standing over you, featureless faces leaning closer, whispers in a language you do not understand. A shiver crawls down your spine as you start the engine, gripping the wheel with white-knuckled hands. You don't tell anyone what happened, but deep down, you know, you were not alone, and whatever took you is still watching. For centuries, stories like these have surfaced all over the world. Individuals who vanish for hours, sometimes even days, with no memory of where they've been. Bright lights in the night sky. Strange, shadowy figures. Dreams, or perhaps memories, of cold metal tables, of long fingers pressing against their skin, of voices inside their heads. Some wake with unexplainable scars. Others hear a strange humming sound that never truly goes away. A few are found wandering aimlessly, dazed and terrified, unable to explain how they got there. These stories are not rare. Reports of alien abductions date back decades, long before Hollywood shaped the image of the gray alien into pop culture. From rural farmhouses to urban neighborhoods, from isolated highways to crowded cities, people from all walks of life have come forward with eerily similar experiences, accounts that defy logic, that science has yet to fully explain. Could they all be lying, hallucinating, victims of some strange psychological phenomenon? Or is something far more disturbing happening? As we unravel the most chilling alien abduction cases ever recorded, we will confront the questions that remain unanswered. Who or what is taking these people? Are they extraterrestrial beings, government agents, or something beyond our comprehension? Why do abductees experience missing time? How do they end up miles away from where they were last seen, often with no recollection of the events? What happens during these encounters? Are they experiments, surveillance, or something even darker? Is there physical evidence? What about strange implants found in abductees, burns, surgical scars, and unexplained biological materials? Why are these events consistent worldwide? Why do people from completely different cultures, backgrounds, and countries describe nearly identical experiences? The deeper we go, the more unsettling the truth becomes. Most terrifying of all is this: if these stories are true, then they are still happening. Somewhere, right now, another person is losing time. Another person is waking up in a strange place, their mind foggy, their body aching with unexplainable pain. Another person is looking at the stars, feeling an unshakable certainty that something, someone, is looking back. Perhaps tonight it will be you. Perhaps it already has been. And the only reason you don't remember is because they didn't want you to. For as long as humans have looked up at the night sky, there have been stories of visitors, beings that descend from the heavens, taking people away before returning them forever changed. Some call them gods, others call them demons. And in modern times, we call them something else. Aliens. Alien abductions may seem like a recent phenomenon, something born from the science fiction of the 20th century. But if we dig deeper, we find that the stories stretch much further back than we realize. Strange lights in the sky, missing time, and people who return. Different. The descriptions may have changed over time, but the core of the story remains the same. Something is taking people, and it's been happening for far longer than we want to believe. Ancient encounters, gods, demons, or something else, long before the word extraterrestrial existed, before science could explain the movement of the stars, ancient civilizations told stories of powerful beings descending from above. They were described as gods, celestial messengers, and supernatural spirits. But looking at these stories through a modern lens, we have to ask, were they seeing something else? The Book of Enoch, an ancient Hebrew text from around 300 BCE, tells of the Watchers, beings that came from the heavens and took humans, sharing knowledge they were never meant to have. These beings were said to manipulate the course of human history, selecting individuals, taking them away, and returning them forever changed. The stories describe them as shining figures with impossible abilities, able to move through the sky as if gravity had no hold on them. The Mayans and Aztecs also spoke of celestial visitors, often depicted as feathered serpents or radiant beings descending from the stars. Some myths tell of humans who were chosen, taken to the realm of the gods, and later returned with strange knowledge, visions of the universe, new languages, even warnings of future events. Even in medieval Europe, there were unsettling reports of people who vanished without explanation. Some claim to have been taken by spirits or fae folk, only to return days, even weeks later, unable to recall where they had been. But there was always something off about them. They spoke of hearing strange voices, of time moving differently, of waking up under a sky that did not belong to this world. Then there was the Aurora, Texas, incident in 1897, a full 50 years before UFO sightings became mainstream. A farmer reported seeing a strange metallic airship crash on his land. Inside, he claimed, was a body, not human, but something small, thin, and grayish in color. The townspeople supposedly buried it in an unmarked grave, and decades later, when researchers attempted to exhume it, the site was mysteriously missing. What were these people seeing? Gods? Spirits? Or something else entirely? Something that didn't just appear in the night sky, but interacted with humans in ways we're only beginning to understand? The Betty and Barney Hill abduction. For centuries, stories of strange beings taking people away were dismissed as myths, folklore, or religious visions. But all of that changed on September 19th, 1961, when one case shattered the idea that alien abductions were just campfire stories. Betty and Barney Hill were an ordinary couple, driving home through the mountains of New Hampshire. It was late at night, and the road was deserted. As they drove through the dark, Betty noticed something in the sky, a bright light, larger than a star, moving in a way that defied explanation. At first, they tried to rationalize it. A satellite, maybe? A plane? But the longer they watched, the clearer it became. This was neither. The light moved too quickly, too erratically. It would zip across the sky in an instant, then stop, hovering completely still. No aircraft known to man could do that. As the object descended, blocking their path, Barney stepped out of the car, gripping a pair of binoculars in his shaking hands. He lifted them to his eyes, and that's when he saw them. Inside the craft, staring directly at him, were figures, tall, thin, humanoid, except for their eyes. Their eyes were massive, black, and empty. Barney was paralyzed, not just with fear, physically unable to move. It was as if something had taken control of his body, forcing him to remain frozen in place. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, everything went black. When Betty and Barney awoke, they were miles down the road. The car was still running, but something felt wrong. The air was thick, their heads ached, and a strange sense of loss filled them. They couldn't explain it, but something was missing. Then they looked at the clock. 2 hours were gone. Neither of them could account for what had happened in those missing 2 hours. But the signs were everywhere. Betty's dress was torn, Barney's shoes were scuffed as if he had been dragged. A series of circular marks appeared on Barney's body, as if something had held him down. And then came the dreams. Terrified and desperate for answers, Betty and Barney turned to a controversial method: hypnotic regression therapy. Under hypnosis, both of them began to recall horrifying details. Betty spoke of being taken aboard the craft, placed on a cold metal table while the figures surrounded her. She felt something pressing into her skin, but there were no hands touching her. Just a floating device, moving on its own, scanning her body. They inserted a long needle into her navel. They spoke to her, but not with words. Their voices were inside her head, a silent communication that made her thoughts feel like they weren't entirely her own. Barney's recollections were even worse. He described being held down, unable to fight back, his body frozen while they examined him. They collected samples, hair, skin, even fluids. He could feel them inside his head, pulling at his mind, searching for something. The most disturbing part: neither of them had spoken about these details before, and yet, under hypnosis, their stories matched exactly. And then there was the star map. During one of her regression sessions, Betty described being shown a strange map, a set of glowing points connected by lines, as if indicating travel routes. At the time, no one could make sense of it. Then, years later, an astronomer identified it. It was an exact match to Zeta Reticuli, a binary star system that was completely unknown to the public in 1961. How did Betty Hill know about a distant star system that humans hadn't even mapped yet? After the Hill case became public, more and more people began coming forward with eerily similar experiences. Bright lights in the sky that hovered, then disappeared in an instant. Missing time, sometimes hours, sometimes days. Strange medical scars, burns, and unexplainable implants found under the skin. The same beings, tall, gray-skinned creatures with enormous black eyes. Were these new reports simply mass hysteria? Or were these people finally speaking out after years of silence? Governments took notice. Documents were quietly declassified. The term UFO abduction entered the mainstream, and soon, what had been dismissed as a one-time event turned into something far more unsettling, a pattern. The deeper we go, the stranger the truth becomes. Did something change in 1961? Did alien visitors finally make their presence known, only to erase their tracks? Or have they been watching us for far longer than we realize, taking, experimenting, and returning people with only fragments of memory left behind? In the next section, we will uncover who or what has been taking these people, because those who have seen them say one thing for certain: they are not human, and they are still watching. The beings they encountered, who or what is taking us? For those who claim to have been taken, the most terrifying part is not the light in the sky. It is not the missing time. It is not even the experiments. It is the eyes, huge, black, and emotionless, watching, studying, unblinking. Many abductees describe their captors with striking consistency, even when their stories are separated by time, distance, and culture. There are variations. Some accounts describe beings that appear human, while others speak of creatures so bizarre they defy comprehension. But across all these stories, patterns emerge. Are these different species, different factions, or are they merely wearing masks, disguising their true nature behind forms we can barely comprehend? The answer may be even more unsettling than we imagine. By far, the most common beings described in abduction cases are the Greys, small, thin humanoids with smooth gray skin, massive heads, and black almond-shaped eyes that seem to pull you in, stripping away every thought, every sense of self. They are not human, that much is clear, but they are human-like, just enough to make them uncanny, too symmetrical, too still, too perfect in their movements. They do not blink, they do not breathe in a way that can be seen, and when they move, it is not like us. No hesitation, no wasted motion, as if their bodies are simply machines being piloted by something else. Abductees describe the Greys as having telepathic abilities, speaking directly into their minds. They do not use words the way humans do. Instead, their thoughts are felt rather than heard, appearing in the mind like a voice that does not belong to you. Some abductees report feeling their thoughts invaded, as if these beings were searching their memories, sifting through their consciousness like pages in a book. But the most terrifying aspect of the Greys is their complete lack of emotion. Those who have encountered them say there is no malice, no anger, no empathy. The Greys do not seem to feel anything at all. They are not cruel in the way that humans understand cruelty. Their actions, the procedures, the examinations, the implants, are clinical, methodical, almost mechanical. And when it is over, they simply let their captives go. But why? Are they scientists, researchers, or something far more disturbing? Caretakers of an experiment so vast that we cannot even begin to understand it? Whatever they are, they have been seen too many times, by too many people, for their existence to be ignored. And they are not alone. The reptilians, the hidden puppeteers, less common but no less chilling, are the accounts of reptilian beings, tall, muscular creatures covered in scaly, almost armor-like skin, their eyes slitted like a serpent's. Unlike the Greys, these beings do not move with cold precision. They move like predators. Those who claim to have encountered them describe a sense of pure terror in their presence. While the Greys are indifferent, the reptilians radiate control, dominance. They do not just observe, they manipulate. Many theorists believe the reptilians are not merely visitors, but infiltrators, beings that have embedded themselves in human civilization for centuries. Some believe they walk among us, wearing masks of flesh, hidden in positions of power, pulling the strings from the shadows. There are even whispers that they control the Greys, using them as biological drones, soulless machines to carry out their orders. If this is true, then the question is no longer what do they want. It is, how long have they been here? While many alien encounters invoke fear, some abductees tell stories of beings that seem almost benevolent. The Nordics, as they are often called, are described as tall, human-like figures with glowing white skin, blonde or silver hair, and piercing blue eyes that seem to shimmer in unnatural ways. They are the most human-looking of all reported alien species, and perhaps that is why they are the most dangerous. Abductees who encounter the Nordics often report a feeling of peace, of being chosen. These beings do not instill terror like the Greys or reptilians. Instead, they offer visions, glimpses of the future, warnings of global catastrophe, messages of unity and enlightenment. They tell their captives that humanity is on a path to destruction, that war, greed, and environmental collapse will be our undoing, that we must change. But here is the disturbing part. The warnings are always vague. The messages, while profound, are never truly actionable. And when the abductees awaken, they feel changed, different, as if a seed has been planted within them. Some believe the Nordics are our allies, watching over us, guiding us toward a better future, but others believe that their beautiful appearance is a disguise, that their words are not warnings but manipulation, that they are not here to save us, they are here to control us. Regardless of which beings are taking people, one thing is clear: their abilities are beyond human comprehension. Paralysis. Abductees frequently describe being unable to move, even as they are lifted from their beds, their cars, their homes. Mind control. Many feel their thoughts being influenced, their emotions shifting against their will. Some report seeing their loved ones in the room, only for the illusion to break, revealing the true beings behind the facade. Time distortion. Missing time is one of the most common elements in abduction stories. Hours vanish in an instant. Some abductees have even claimed to be gone for days, only to return minutes later in our reality. Biological experimentation. There are countless reports of medical examinations, genetic sampling, and strange procedures performed on abductees. Some return with implants, small, metallic objects embedded beneath their skin, objects that defy analysis. The hybrid theory. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that some abductees claim they have been used in breeding programs. They describe seeing human-alien hybrid children, not fully one species, not fully the other. If any of this is true, then we must ask, why? Why do these beings take people only to return them? What is their purpose? Are we specimens? Are we property? Or are they preparing us for something far greater than we can possibly imagine? The ones who never forgot. For most abductees, the experience is fragmented. Flashes of memory, brief glimpses of something unnatural, an overwhelming sense of being watched. But for others, the memories come back in vivid, horrifying detail. Some return with marks on their bodies, surgical scars that shouldn't be there. Others wake up miles from where they were taken, confused, disoriented, and terrified. And a few never return at all, vanishing without a trace, their disappearances chalked up to unsolved mysteries, never officially linked to anything beyond the ordinary. But the stories remain, and when you hear them, it's hard to believe they're anything but real. The Pascagoula Abduction, 1973, the night the river stood still. October 11th, 1973, Pascagoula, Mississippi. Two men, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, were fishing along the banks of the Pascagoula River when their lives changed forever. The night was still. The water lapped quietly against the shore. Then, without warning, a strange humming sound filled the air. The two men turned their heads just in time to see a glowing, oval-shaped craft hovering above the river. Before they could react, a blinding light engulfed them, paralyzed. Neither of them could move, their limbs frozen in place as three bizarre creatures descended from the craft. These beings were unlike anything they had ever seen. Not Greys, not reptilians, not Nordics, but something else entirely. Tall, metallic-skinned humanoids with claw-like hands and featureless faces, except for a single slit where a mouth should be. The beings moved toward them without walking, gliding across the ground in an unnatural motion. Before Hickson and Parker could scream, the creatures grabbed them, dragging them aboard the craft. Inside, both men described a terrifying experience. A strange machine scanned their bodies, emitting a loud, clicking noise. They felt something cold, something mechanical probing them, scanning them as if they were nothing more than specimens. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. They were back on the riverbank. The craft was gone. The night was silent once more. Terrified, the men ran to the local sheriff's department, where they recounted their story in a frantic panic. The officers were skeptical, until they left the two men alone in an interrogation room, secretly recording them. What they heard on that tape shook them to their core. Even when alone, when they thought no one was listening, Hickson and Parker continued talking about what had happened, too horrified to believe it themselves. It wasn't a hoax. It wasn't a lie. They were truly afraid. Years later, Parker would speak publicly for the first time, saying he had remained silent for so long because he was terrified they would come back. Maybe they never left. The Travis Walton case, 1975, 5 Days in Darkness. On November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger, was working with a group of men in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. As they drove home at dusk, they spotted a bright, glowing light hovering in the distance. Curious, Walton stepped out of the truck, walking toward the object. Before anyone could stop him, a beam of light shot from the craft, hitting him square in the chest. His body flew backward, thrown like a rag doll by the impact. His co-workers screamed. Panicked, they fled in their truck, leaving him behind. But when they returned minutes later, Walton was gone. For 5 days, there was no sign of him. Police suspected foul play, accusing the loggers of murder. But then, on the 5th day, Walton reappeared, miles from where he had vanished, naked, confused, and terrified. He remembered only fragments at first, but as the days passed, the memories returned. Walton described waking up in a sterile, metallic room surrounded by small humanoid figures with massive black eyes. He tried to fight, but his body would not obey him. He was restrained, forced onto a table, and subjected to strange procedures. The memories blurred together, the sensation of floating, the feeling of something inserted into his body, the overwhelming sense of helplessness. Then, without warning, he was back. To this day, Walton maintains his story is 100% true. He has passed multiple lie detector tests and his case remains one of the most famous and most compelling alien abduction stories ever recorded. If it was all a hallucination, why has no one ever been able to prove it? The Allagash Incident, 1976. 4 witnesses, 1 horror. What makes the Allagash abduction one of the most disturbing cases in UFO history is that it wasn't just one person who experienced it. It was 4. In August 1976, 4 friends, Jack Weiner, Jim Weiner, Chuck Rack, and Charlie Foltz, set off on a canoeing trip in the remote wilderness of Maine. On their second night, as they drifted on the water, a bright object appeared in the sky. The light grew larger, closer, then blackness. When they came to, they were back on shore, their fire reduced to nothing but smoldering embers. Hours had passed, but none of them could remember what happened. Years later, haunted by nightmares of shadowy figures standing over them, long fingers pressing against their bodies, the men agreed to undergo hypnotic regression therapy. The memories that emerged were horrifying. They recalled being taken aboard a craft, stripped down, examined under a blinding white light. They described cold metallic tables, tubes inserted into their bodies, something pressed against their skulls as if searching for something inside them. Most terrifying of all 4 men told the exact same story. Different sessions, different days, identical details. They had been taken, and they had never truly been alone since. The modern abductees, are they still taking people? Many skeptics dismiss these stories as mass hysteria, sleep paralysis, or outright lies. But if that's the case, why do these abductions continue? In 2008, a man in Texas woke up in his backyard, his clothes folded neatly beside him, with 3 hours missing from his memory. In 2015, a woman in England reported waking up with a surgical scar that had not been there the night before. Her doctor was unable to explain it. In 2021, hikers in Canada claim they saw one of their friends vanish in a flash of light, only to find him an hour later, miles away, shaking and unable to speak. These stories keep happening, and the more we listen, the more we realize they are still out there, still taking people, still watching, and if the past tells us anything, they always come back. The mind under siege, psychological and scientific theories, alien abductions. For some, they are undeniable proof that we are not alone. For others, they are a terrifying enigma, one that defies logic, science, and everything we understand about reality. But what if the answer isn't out there? What if it's inside us? Are these experiences the result of extraterrestrial visitors, or could they be the mind's response to something it cannot fully comprehend? Some researchers believe alien abductions are not encounters with beings from another world, but manifestations of deep-seated psychological and neurological phenomena. Yet even these scientific explanations are deeply unsettling, because if the abductees aren't being taken by something, then why do they all experience the same thing? Sleep paralysis, the terror that feels too real. One of the most commonly proposed explanations for alien abduction is sleep paralysis, a terrifying condition where a person wakes up aware of their surroundings but completely unable to move. It begins in the dead of night. You open your eyes. The room is still, but something feels wrong. There is a weight on your chest, an overwhelming sense that you are not alone. Then the shadows shift. A figure looms over you, sometimes faceless, sometimes with huge black eyes staring down at you. You try to scream, to thrash, to run, but your body does not respond. Many who suffer from sleep paralysis describe feeling a presence in the room, sometimes hearing whispers or sensing an unseen force pressing against them. Some even report levitating, being pulled toward an unknown destination before suddenly waking up. The resemblance to alien abduction accounts is eerie. Could sleep paralysis explain these stories? Is it simply a waking nightmare, the brain misfiring in a way that makes the experience feel horrifyingly real? Maybe, but it does not explain the missing time, the physical marks, the shared experiences of people who have never met. It does not explain why so many abductees wake up miles away from where they were taken. It does not explain why some never wake up at all. Hypnotic regression. Memory or manufactured reality. Many abductees recover their memories through hypnotic regression therapy, a process where a hypnotist helps them recall forgotten experiences. But is this a path to the truth, or a way to plant false memories? The power of suggestion is a dangerous thing. Under hypnosis, people can recall detailed, vivid experiences that may have never actually happened. Some skeptics believe alien abduction stories could be unintentionally fabricated by therapists who unknowingly lead their subjects toward answers they want to hear. But if that's true, then why are so many of these accounts identical? Why do abductees, many of whom have no knowledge of each other's cases, describe the same beings, the same ships, the same horrifying procedures? Could it really be mass hysteria? Or is something deeper buried within their subconscious? And if these memories are false, then why do some abductees have scars, burns, and implants? Physical evidence of something that should not exist. As reports of strange lights and mysterious crafts flooded the media, fiction took over. The 1950s and 60s saw a wave of science fiction films that painted aliens as invaders, cold, calculating beings arriving in metallic ships, stealing humans away for experiments. But then came a film that changed everything. In 1977, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released, shifting the perception of alien encounters forever. Instead of mindless invaders, Spielberg's film depicted aliens as silent, watching, waiting, something beyond human comprehension. The most chilling part, the depictions of bright lights, missing time, and strange telepathic communication mirrored real-life abduction stories that had been emerging since the 1950s Betty and Barney Hill case in 1961. People who had never heard of alien abductions before began recognizing their own experiences in these films and books. Had pop culture created the narrative, or had the abductees finally been given the words to describe something real? The Greys, a Hollywood creation, or a real entity? One of the most unsettling aspects of the alien abduction phenomenon is how consistent the descriptions of the Greys have become. Before the 1960s, aliens in fiction were often green, monstrous, insect-like, or robotic. But after the Hills case, a different image began emerging. Slender bodies, pale gray skin, large, black almond-shaped eyes, small mouths, and no visible noses. Telepathic communication. This description became the default image of extraterrestrials in books, movies, and television. The question is, was this imagery shaped by Hollywood? Or is this the real form of the beings taking people? Some skeptics argue that abduction stories changed because of media influence, that the widespread depiction of the Greys led people to fabricate similar stories. But that doesn't explain why people from completely different cultures, with no access to the same media, report the same figures. It doesn't explain why abductees describe identical procedures, examinations, genetic sampling, and the overwhelming sense of being studied. If Hollywood created the Greys, why are they so universally recognized by abductees who had never even heard of alien abduction before their own experiences? Video games, internet horror, and the digital evolution of alien fear. As the internet grew, so did the horror surrounding alien abductions. The X-Files, 1993 to 2002, fueled paranoia about government conspiracies and UFO secrecy. Fire in the Sky, 1993, was based on the real Travis Walton abduction case and terrified audiences with its horrific depiction of alien experimentation. Until Dawn, 2015, and other video games introduced players to the Wendigo-style depiction of greys, mixing traditional horror with abduction elements. Creepypasta and online horror forums exploded with alien horror stories, especially ones involving distorted time, lost memories, and encounters with glowing-eyed figures in the woods. The more stories that were told, the more people came forward claiming similar experiences. Were these experiences inspired by horror media, or was horror media reflecting something that was actually happening? If you woke up in a cold, sterile room, surrounded by silent figures with empty black eyes, would you believe it was a dream? Or would you realize in that moment that everything you thought was fiction was actually real? A phenomenon that won't die? There is something about alien abductions that refuses to be forgotten. Unlike ghosts, demons, or cryptids, alien abduction stories follow specific patterns that remain eerily consistent across different countries, different cultures, and different time periods. The bright lights, the paralysis, the missing time, the silent figures standing over them, the overwhelming feeling of being watched. No other paranormal phenomenon has this level of consistency. So what does that mean? If abductions were purely fiction, shouldn't the stories change more over time? Shouldn't abductees describe different creatures, different experiences, different memories? But they don't. No matter how much time passes, the same elements keep appearing. Pop culture may have shaped the way we talk about alien abductions, but it does not explain why they keep happening, or why those who experience them never forget. Could alien abductions be real? Evidence, cover-ups, and conspiracies. The idea of alien abductions is terrifying enough on its own, but what if the horror doesn't end with the stories? What if there's evidence? What if there are physical traces left behind? Pieces of metal embedded beneath the skin, radiation burns, and medical anomalies that no doctor can explain? And what if, just maybe, governments know more than they're telling us? The deeper we go, the stranger the truth becomes. The implants, objects that shouldn't exist. For years, alien abductees have reported something strange. Small metallic objects found beneath their skin, discovered only through X-rays or MRIs. Some of these objects are deeply embedded in areas where no injury or incision should have occurred. The most unsettling part? When doctors attempt to remove them, they find no sign of entry wounds, as if the implants had simply materialized inside the body. Surrounding nerve tissue fused to the object, something impossible under normal biological conditions. Metallic compositions unknown to modern science, with some implants containing rare elements not found on Earth. One of the most famous cases involved Dr. Roger Lear, a podiatric surgeon who spent years extracting and studying these implants. His findings? Many of the implants emitted low-frequency electromagnetic signals, even after removal. Some contained nanotechnology-like structures, decades ahead of human capabilities. Others were found to be made of meteoric metals, elements often found in objects from space. If these objects were not naturally occurring, then the question becomes, who or what put them there, and why? The government secrecy. What do they know? For decades, world governments have denied any knowledge of alien abductions, UFOs, or extraterrestrial contact. But in recent years, something strange has happened. Governments are slowly admitting that unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, are real. In 2020, the Pentagon declassified 3 official UFO videos, confirming that the footage was genuine and that the crafts in question defied the laws of physics. In 2023, former U.S. intelligence officer David Grush testified before Congress, claiming that the U.S. government has retrieved non-human craft and possibly even bodies. These admissions have fueled speculation. If the government admits to UFOs, what else are they hiding? If they have retrieved alien technology, is it possible they have also studied alien biology? And if they know about alien visitors, then do they also know about alien abductions? If so, why aren't they warning us? Unless they don't want us to know, because maybe we are part of something much bigger than we think. The hybrid program. Are we being altered? One of the most disturbing theories surrounding alien abductions is the idea that they are not simply experiments. They are something more. Many abductees, especially women, have reported experiences where they were shown human-alien hybrid children. They describe tall, thin figures with human-like features but black, almond-shaped eyes. Children that seem almost human, but not quite. A deep, emotional connection to these beings, as if they share a genetic bond. Could these abductions be part of an ongoing genetic experiment, one that has been running for centuries? Are they altering human DNA, blending their species with ours? And if so, for what purpose? Are they trying to integrate with us? Or are they replacing us? The worldwide pattern. Why are they everywhere? The most chilling part of alien abductions is that they are not limited to one country, one culture, or one time period. They have been reported everywhere. The United States, the Betty and Barney Hill case in New Hampshire, the Pascagoula abduction in Mississippi, the Travis Walton incident in Arizona. Europe, cases from the UK, Italy, and Sweden have followed the same patterns. Bright lights, missing time, shadowy figures. South America, reports of people being taken in Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, with entire villages witnessing strange lights. Asia, cases in China and Japan describe abductions with telepathic communication and paralysis. Africa, reports from Zimbabwe, Kenya, and South Africa describe children witnessing beings stepping out of glowing crafts. If alien abductions were just hallucinations or sleep paralysis, why do people from vastly different backgrounds describe the exact same experience? Why do their memories align with those of people they have never met, in places they have never been? Are these isolated incidents? Or are they part of a larger pattern, one that spans the entire world? The question we don't want to ask. After everything we have uncovered, the missing time, the implants, the witnesses, the global consistency of these stories, one final question remains. Are they still taking people? And if so, why? Are we simply a curiosity, a species under observation, or are we something more, a resource, a test, an experiment? And if they are studying us, what happens when the experiment is over? Maybe they have already chosen who stays and who disappears. They are still watching. It begins the same way it always does. A quiet night, a lonely road, a flicker of light in the sky, too still, too bright. You tell yourself it's nothing, a plane, a satellite, just a trick of the mind. Then your radio crackles, the streetlights flicker, the air turns electric, humming with something unseen, and suddenly, the world goes dark. The ones who never came back, the same. This is the reality that thousands of abductees describe. The light comes first, then the paralysis, a weightless feeling, as if their bodies no longer belong to them. A presence in the room, or the car, or the woods, or wherever they happened to be before it all went black. Then the figures appear, tall, thin, silent, watching. They do not speak, yet their voices invade the mind, whispering in a language without words. There is no escape, there never was. Some are taken from their homes, their bedrooms, their vehicles. Others vanish in the wilderness only to reappear miles away with no memory of how they got there. Some return the next morning, others are missing for days, and some never return at all. They wake up with scars that shouldn't be there, implants beneath their skin, a deep, aching certainty that something has changed within them. But when they try to explain what happened, no one believes them. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they always return. Because if they truly wanted to take us, they wouldn't bring us back. What we know and what we fear, we know that thousands of people across decades and across the world report the same experience: bright lights, missing time, strange figures, and memories that surface only in fragments. We know that many abductees return with physical evidence: surgical scars, inexplicable implants, and altered brain activity that defies scientific explanation. We know that governments have quietly admitted to the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena, crafts that move in ways that break the laws of physics, crafts that seem to be observing us, crafts that seem to come and go as they please. But what we don't know is worse. What do they want? Are we test subjects? A species under observation? Or something else? And if they have been watching us for this long, for centuries, perhaps even millennia, then the real question is, why haven't they made themselves known? Because maybe we aren't ready for the truth. Or maybe the truth is too horrifying to understand. A final warning. What if it's you? Imagine this. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house is quiet. The world outside is still. Then a faint hum fills the air. It is not loud, not aggressive, just there. A low, vibrating frequency that you feel more than hear. Your body tenses. You try to move, but you can't. Your breathing quickens, but your chest won't rise. Then, from the corner of your vision, you see them. Dark, featureless shapes standing at the foot of your bed, watching, waiting. A light flashes, so bright it burns through your eyelids. Then, nothing. You wake up hours later, maybe in your bed, maybe somewhere else. You feel strange, wrong, and somewhere deep inside, a voice that does not belong to you whispers, "They are not finished with you yet." The fear that never fades. Alien abduction is more than a story, more than a theory. It is a lingering fear buried in the human subconscious, an ancient terror that has followed us through generations. Because whether they are aliens, interdimensional beings, government experiments, or something even stranger, something is taking people, something is returning them, and something is waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Maybe they are studying us. Maybe they are testing us. Maybe they are preparing us for something we cannot yet comprehend. Or maybe they are simply deciding who stays and who disappears forever. Because if the abductees are right, if their memories are true, then the most chilling thought of all is this: they always come back, but someday they won't. The last question: what if it already happened to you? How would you know if you had been taken? Would you remember? Or would you dismiss the signs? The moment of déjà vu, the shadow in the corner that wasn't there a second ago, the static on the radio just for a second, the missing hour you can't explain, the vague sense of something watching you from the sky when you look up at the stars. You tell yourself it's all in your head. You tell yourself it's just a story. But tonight, when the lights go out and the silence settles in, ask yourself one last question. Are you sure? Because if you wake up tomorrow and something feels different, Maybe it's because they brought you back. The universe is vast, and the truth, it's out there, waiting to be uncovered. If you found yourself questioning reality tonight, imagine what else is lurking in the darkness, watching, waiting. Were these encounters real, or just the product of the human mind trying to explain the unexplainable? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, don't forget to hit that like button. It lets me know you want more. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the mysteries that haunt our world and beyond. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies. You never know what's watching you.